Shalom, shalom, friends. Welcome to this episode here of the Watchdog. I am your host, CJ Cox. This is exclusively on the Synagogue. And of course, we appreciate having you guys with us today. God bless you all, of course. Got some interesting news to be talking about here today, but of course, want to stall a little tiny bit for time while we allow a couple people to show up and actually check this episode out. If you are here already, please do like, please do share, get this out to your different social media accounts, get your friends on this, all that kind of good stuff so that we can actually get the message out. Of course, what good is a message without an audience to hear it? Also, if you like our content consistently, of course, please do try subscribing. We have the Watchdogs posted every single Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, as well as a other Unapologetics podcast that is apologetics related, and that will be on Saturdays and Sundays, with the Saturday version being what we call an Unapologetics Light because it is a shorter version. We also post debates and open rooms on this, and we have some announcements regarding those things that you guys may be interested in towards the end of this program. So, thank you guys very much for being here again, right? Shalom, shalom. Always nice to have you. Today, we're going to be discussing a little bit of the Robin Hood situation, some things going on in the ecumenical movement, a couple updates on Myanmar, a couple updates on Pastor Tony's spell, and before any of that, we're going to get to Ocasio freaking Cortez. And excuse my French if you consider that to be a word that should not actually be said. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who recently did an hour-long Instagram live soliloquy where basically she claimed that the entire situation that happened at January 6th was all about her because she, this one time, multiple years ago, survived a sexual assault. Now, forgive me if I sound a little bit dismissive, my friends, but I don't care, even in the slightest, whether or not you survived a sexual assault. Now, of course, if she did, that is obviously a traumatic event. I hope she gets over it. I hope Christ is with her. I hope that the people who did it are literally buried, right? However, Your Honor, I'd just like to point out that it is incredibly politically expedient for this woman to have the attention and spotlight on her. Your Honor, I'd just like to point out that nobody has ever heard anything about this until it was politically expedient for her to start talking about it. Your Honor, I would just like to point out that the fact that she may or may not have been sexually assaulted has literally nothing to do with the fact that there was a riot at the Capitol on January 6th. Zero, nada, zip. It is nothing more but a propaganda technique to try and get people to feel sorry for her, even though literally nothing happened to her on January 6th. Literally nothing. There are 537 other members of Congress, some of whom, for example, the vice president at the time, who would actually not be a member of Congress, and Nancy Pelosi, right? Some of whom actually had threats against their lives, people who were going in with zip ties to try and literally zip tie their hands and guillotine these people, right? They're obviously not kids. Most of them are very old. But AOC, friends, who had to get stuck in a closet and had a cop actually come find her to bring her to safety, that she had to bring years ago, so feel sorry for her, okay? I personally, I look at this situation, and I think to myself, oh, wow, woe is Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Forget the fact that we're having a whole bunch of people squash our liberties. Forget the fact that there were threats made against elected officials' lives, who are not you, by the way. Forget the fact that there's a whole half of the population who thinks that the voting system is rigged against them, right? Forget the fact that we have 30,000 troops. Actually, I think it's down to 5,000 now, but they'll be there till March. It was up at 65,000 at its height, if you guys recall, on Inauguration Day, right? In Washington, D.C., so on and so forth. Forget all of that. AOC had a really tough time, guys. And this one time at band camp, AOC may or may not have been touched by a boy inappropriately. And so therefore, we all need to sit around and get in a big drum hippie circle and start singing all of our praises and woe is me. Insane stuff that is going on in our nation. The nation literally falling apart at the seams, but this bartender wants you to know that she feels sorry for herself. Sorry if I sound a little dismissive, but I am, right? And this actually gets to the title that I have here today. The elites are the real victims here, right? Because that seems to be what we're having pushed on us. The elites are the real victims here. See, forget the fact that there was a whole bunch of riots going on for multiple months on end that did $2 billion in damage and killed 30 plus people, destroying tons and tons of small businesses, right? In Detroit, in Seattle, in Minneapolis, in Atlanta, in Washington, D.C., in Portland, etc., right? Let's forget about that. Because, I mean, who cares, right? Those are just regular citizens and small business owners. I mean, nobody actually cares about them, am I right? No, what we care about is the elites. Oh, for 45 minutes, some people stormed their little home. And so now we all need to cry and get sad. And oh my goodness. Can you believe there was an insurrection in Capitol Hill? It's so sad. Whatever will you do, wiping your money with illegally acquired lobbyist money? Whatever will you do, or wiping your tears, rather, with illegally acquired lobbyist money, right? Woe is you, hiding out in your mansion, having your servant, probably colored, by the way, go out and get you a nice meal, some high-quality $15 ice cream, right? Woe is you. I don't care, right? But this is what the media wants us to believe, right? The media wants us to believe that journalists are a protected class who are being assaulted, and that these politicians have had these massive traumatic events, right? And the one we'll get to, actually, as far as reading the articles, right? All these billionaire hedge fund investors, right? They're all gonna be losing all of their money, and it's like, oh, I'm sorry, right? That you and your cushy little life, with your elitist mentality, finally had the smallest, tiniest smidgen of the real world come in and kind of flick you on the nose. I apologize for that. We'll get back to making your life so utterly super swell, right? Of course, on all of our own backs. But I digress on that. You guys can obviously see how I feel about these morons and their victim mentality. But let's go ahead and get into that. By the way, I see Honesty Angel is here. Shalom, Honesty Angel. And get into that. In particular, the Google and Robinhood fiasco. So briefly, I'm sharing this to some social media, so I'm going to just let you guys know a little bit of what it is we're talking about if you haven't heard already. So a bunch of billionaire hedge fund managers was saying, well, we are going to actually get rid of, oh, come on. All right, friends, it looks like I am roboting again here. Make this a little better. And yet it's now happened to me twice in a row. So I'm not sure what exactly is going on here. I apologize for that. Hopefully it is no longer roboting rather at the moment. If it does continue to robot like this, then what we'll probably do is I will just record this episode and we'll post it later on tonight, but it won't be live, right? So if this continues, let you guys let me know, right? And yeah, we'll go ahead and switch that up. So far, it does seem to be good. I just saw Honesty Angel give me the thumbs up, so I guess we're doing pretty well now. But if it does continue like that, we will pre-record and post this for you guys later on. Our next article we'll be discussing today, again, to get you guys in a little bit of an idea as to how exactly this occurred, what exactly is it that occurred, right? So basically, we had a situation where a bunch of hedge fund managers got together, right? And they were making a bet basically saying GameStop is going to fail. GameStop is about to go under. They are trying to communicate to everybody else who's with them is what we want to do is we want to wait for this to collapse. We also want to get people not to try and push it back up, because that's a big part of the reason why you actually say these things is to keep people away, right? Don't buy this stock. This stock will lead you to lose a bunch of money, kind of thing, right? So, and I'm speaking as if from the hedge fund managers, right? So we're going to all collectively get around, right? We're going to obviously make this prediction, and then once these stocks are all really, really, really low, we're going to purchase a bunch of it so that we can actually make a high profit, right? Just to give you an example of why that would make you a high profit. So you buy one $5 stock, it goes up a penny, you have made 1 penny. You buy 5 $1 stocks, it goes up a penny, you've just made 5 pennies. You see what I'm saying? So you buy 100 $1 stocks, you make $1 every single time they go a penny. If you make 1,000, so on and so forth, right? So buying really cheap stock in bulk is actually a pretty common tactic for stock traders and hedge fund managers to try and make a lot of money, because for the most part, it tends to be pretty low risk, high reward, right? That was the whole idea that they wanted to try and go through here. So GameStop's about to collapse. As soon as they do, we're going to buy up a bunch of the stock. To explain it better than I could, but that's sort of the simple layman's version of it, right? So a bunch of kids on Reddit basically decided, hey, you know what? How's about no? We're not going to allow that to happen. We're going to actually go and collectively get together and buy a bunch of the GameStop stock ourselves, and thus artificially raise the price of that stock to, as it turned out, pretty insane proportions. A year ago, it cost like $2.50 or something like that to buy GameStop stock, right? At its peak, it crossed over $400. And that was just, I think, a week ago, if I'm not mistaken. There are some people out there, formerly in their mother's basement playing World of Warcraft and Call of Duty every single day, who are now literally millionaires thanks to this event. And after this had taken place, after over 50% of all Robinhood users actually had some level of investment, in the stocks, in the GameStop stock, right? Literally, over 50%, think about that. Over 50% of all people using Robinhood were invested in and actually, you know what? I just got distracted by this post made by Iron Cherry Theory. He's exactly right. The hedge fund guys were duping people for years. It's highly accurate. GameStop has not been profitable for a very long time, right? So the whole goal was basically to, as Iron Cherry Theory just said, dupe people into making it even, into having them make even less money, so that we being the hedge fund managers can, like I said, buy it all up for an insanely cheap price and make ourselves a large profit. Well, like I said, these Reddit kids, they decided not happening. So we're going to go buy a bunch of it up. And of course, supply and demand, the more of it you buy, the higher the price goes. And eventually it crossed over. The highest I saw that I can remember specifically was 369. But I know it got bigger than that. I know it actually ended up getting up over the $400 mark at some point. Right now, I believe it's fluctuating between $90 and $100. But that's where it had gotten at its peak. And a lot of people are very, very wealthy off of this particular event, right? A lot of people just bought a whole bunch of it. Was probably a little bit more expensive than the 257 it was a year ago, right? But a lot of people just bought a lot of stock for, maybe $40-$50 and sold it for 10 times that, right? I won't get into details just because obviously this is a man's personal life, but I personally know a man who spent roughly something like $4.50 on 400 separate GameStop stocks that person is rich now. I mean, he's six figures rich. He's not millionaire rich, but he's rich, right? And I know him personally. Pretty cool event for, pushing the financial power to the people, except that Robinhood decided that it wasn't okay. Robinhood decided what we're going to do, because this is not a situation that we can allow to happen. And by the way, I have an official statement from Robinhood. They sent out an email to all Robinhood users, and so I'm going to read you that email to give you the rationale behind why it is that they actually did these things. But basically, they decided, no, you're not actually allowed any longer to sell these stocks, or to buy, rather, these stocks. You can sell these stocks, right? So you can make your money back, but you're not actually able to buy these stocks. And for a moment in time, GameStop was even completely deplatformed from Robinhood. It was a very short moment in time, but it did happen, right? And this sort of thing happened with numerous other companies as well, because the Reddit group, Redstop. Mixing wires in my head, I apologize. The Reddit group didn't just stop with GameStop, right? They also were buying a bunch into Nokia. They also were buying a bunch in AMC. They were buying a bunch in a cannabis company called Sundial Growers. So on and so forth, right? I think Barnes & Noble even had a little bit of a bump, although it wasn't anything even close to what we saw with GameStop and AMC, right? And a lot of these groups, or a lot of these companies, rather, ended up having basically restrictions on them where you couldn't actually buy the product, or, and this is even worse, the company's stock was completely deplatformed. Right? There are numerous stocks that you can use, right, or that you could use, rather, a week ago, that you cannot use right now, right? Those of you who have Robinhood, you can go to your own Robinhood account, look up some of these companies, and you'll find that. Some of these companies, it's been changed back to regular, right? For example, I believe you can buy and sell GameStop stock again at this point. But of course, that's now that it's down to $80-$90, now that we've gotten the peasant revolt under control, right? I hear Iron Charioteer. It's crazy how much I agree with Iron Charioteer on this particular issue. He says Robinhood lied to their customers. They are selling info to Wall Street. Facts. Exactly. And they also may or may not have violated the 1934 Stock Exchange Act. I personally have to do a little bit more reading onto that until I can say definitively. But I have heard from other pundits pretty convincing arguments that the 1934 Stock Exchange Act was actually violated by Robinhood, and that potentially we could see some charges brought up against them. Although, to be fair, I mean, it's never going to happen with a DOJ run by Yellen, right? I'm not going to say it will never happen under a Biden administration, because I think actually quite a bit of progressives are on the same side as conservatives when it comes to this particular issue. Right, the elites are not allowed to just sit there and basically keep us all under their thumb while we sit and inhale dud and mud and dirt and dung and other sorts of things that come from their companies. And of course, I'm being a little exaggeratory, but you guys, of course, see what I mean. But under Yellen, it's absolutely not going to happen. Under the current Secretary of the Treasury, Janet Yellen, who is absolutely bought and paid for by the Wall Street cronies, right? There's no way that anything happens to Robinhood under her DOJ. It might happen on a state level. It might happen on an individual suit level. It might happen in another country. It might happen when we get a different treasurer, right? But nonetheless, it won't happen under her watch. That's for sure. But like I said, there is a lot of people talking about whether or not they may or may not have violated the 1934 Stock Exchange Act. And we're going to go ahead and actually read some of the articles here to give you guys an idea deeper than my own, sitting up here on YouTube idea of what exactly is going on and why Google is involved in it as well. So I did just give you guys the, rundown on what exactly is going on. This is from The Blaze, talking about how Google ended up getting in on this, deleting 100,000 negative reviews of Robinhood on the App Store. Why were there 100,000 negative reviews of Robinhood on the App Store? Well, because of the thing I just told you about, right? A lot of customers, I mean, think about this, over 50% of all Robinhood customers owned stock in GameStop. And then all of a sudden, they were told that they couldn't actually buy stock in GameStop, rather, right? Again, wires crossing. I apologize. I mean, think about that for a second. You just pissed off over 50% of your clientele, of your base, right? And so, of course, you're going to get a large number of people very pissed off at you going to places where they can make their anger known. For example, the App Store, in this case, the Google Play App Store, right? So, your Samsungs and stuff like that. And Google, being just as in bed with the elite as Robinhood is, in fact, Robinhood and elite's upper selves, obviously, not just in the sense that they're rich, but also in the sense that they are in this, this cabal, if you will. It's not a literal cabal, right? It's not like none of this QAnon stuff, right? But there is certainly a, quote, establishment, right? The establishment changes depending on what country you're in and what point in time you're in, absolutely. But there is certainly an establishment, right? And Robinhood and Google are certainly members, card carrying even, VIP, of that establishment, especially Google. I guess I'm not 100% sure on Robinhood, but especially Google. So you get all of these, bombs and bombs and bombs and bombs of people saying, hey, I'm fed up with you. I don't like you. You need to give me my rights back. You are violating my rights. You are violating my ability to be a savvy consumer, to be a savvy investor, right? And you're lying to me, by the way. Is not the point of Robinhood to be power to the people? Well, that didn't age very well, now did it? But at any rate, so this is why you had 100,000 negative reviews on Robinhood, and this is why Google decided they were going to get rid of it. Anyway, outraged Robinhood customers flooded the app with negative reviews after Robinhood halted trades of games. You guys hear at some point their little message to the peasants like us as to whether or not, as to why, rather, they actually did this thing. But nonetheless, I hope the show is entertaining to you guys, because it's nothing but frustrating for me. I kid. I do like doing this. App Robinhood froze trades of GameStop and other volatile stocks. Outraged customers flooded app stores to give furious one-star reviews proclaiming their displeasure. Now, just to remind you guys what that means, right? What it means to say they froze the trade of these stocks, right? Is basically they did not allow you to buy these stocks. You were still allowed to sell these stocks, but they would not allow you to actually buy these stocks. Did I delete that email from Robinhood? Man, that's super lame. I hope I didn't. Yeah, go ahead and find that. Thank you. Anyways, so yeah, just to give you an idea, right? It wasn't completely frozen, but there was some significant freezing of your ability to buy and sell of the GameStop stock. And like I said, some of them were actually completely deplatformed entirely. That cannabis company I told you guys about, Sundial Growers, I believe they're back up now, but at the time, actually, they were completely deplatformed from Robinhood, as well as a few other companies for, I guess, being too volatile or whatever. In response, Google intervened to delete the negative reviews on Google Play Store and protect Robinhood app's reputation. You heard that correctly. In response, Google intervened to delete the negative reviews on the Google Play Store and protect the Robinhood app's reputation. I certainly hope that the progressives and independents out there who have seen Google, whether it be via their Google search engine or via YouTube, who have seen Google constantly censoring people, right? I hope they see this and realize that this censorship will not just stop with those quote unquote rednecks that you so disapprove of, right? It doesn't just stop there. It also will bleed into your ability to make YouTube content. It also will bleed into your ability to look up certain things on Google. And it also will bleed into your ability even to review certain apps on their store. Because if those apps are buddy-buddy with Google, then of course they're not going to let let the company's reputation collapse on Google's watch, right? Excuse me, I had to get a drink of my coffee here. Google confirmed that it acted to delete the negative reviews to The Verge, which is actually where most of this article is going to come from, starting at about right here. So once I click the read more, we'll be going, leaving the Blaze to The Verge. It's going to be still here on the Blaze, of course, but it's actually a Verge article. Nonetheless, Google confirmed that it acted to delete the negative reviews to The Verge, claiming that the dissatisfied Robinhood customers leaving negative reviews violated Google's policies by intentionally trying to drive down the app's ratings. So, ladies and gentlemen, if an app actually does something terrible, and so you decide I'm going to give this app a negative review for doing something terrible, and it just so happens that that thing that was terrible pissed off a lot of other people who aren't you, and so you all did it at the same time, Google doesn't like that. Google says that's a violation of their policies because you, sir, are not actually allowed to give anybody a negative review on Google, right? You're not allowed to try and bring down the reputation of one of our esteemed clients, you simple peasant. At one point Thursday, the Robinhood app had a 1-star rating with 274,982 reviews. By the time The Verge published its report, approximately 100,000 reviews had been deleted, and the app was back up to a 4-star rating. Tell me that that is not corruption. Tell me that that is not Google actively being involved in manufacturing a 5-star or 4-star rather rating for Robinhood. That is exactly what just occurred. Robinhood pissed off their customers. Their customers decided we don't like this product anymore. In fact, we find it to be corrupt. We might even want criminal charges brought against them if it turns out that such a thing is legal. And what does Google say? Sirs or ma'ams. I mean, that should be infuriating to you regardless of your political position, right? Conservative, traditionalist conservative like the Tea Party, progressive, more moderate liberal like your Pelosi, an independent, somebody just off on the fringes saying, something communist or fascist or monarchist, right? Or whatever, theocratic, doesn't matter. Horrible corruption that should not be allowed to take place. Of course, it is taking place. From The Verge, quote, "It's not outside Google's purview to delete these posts. Google's policies..." Oh, wait, hang on. Yeah, okay, sorry. I had to make sure I was reading the thing. It's not outside Google's purview to delete these posts. Google's policies explicitly prohibit reviews intended to manipulate an app's ratings, and the company says it has a system that combines human intelligence and machine learning to detect and enforce policy violations in ratings and reviews. Now, isn't that ironic that they say they explicitly prohibit reviews intended to manipulate an app's rating? And yet they just deleted 100,000 different reviews with the intention of manipulating Robinhood's rating, getting it up from a 1-star to a... My name is Google. Google says it specifically took action on reviews that it felt confident violated these policies, the company tells The Verge. Google says companies do not have the ability to delete reviews themselves. Although they effectively do if they're buddy-buddy with Google. Isn't that right? Google CEO, whose name I can never pronounce because he's Indian. Which, of course, is not his fault. But nonetheless. Angry Robinhood customers began leaving negative reviews of Robinhood's app after the company acted to halt trades of certain volatile stocks, including GameStop, popularized on the Reddit discussion board Wall Street Bets. Users who already owned these stocks were permitted to close their positions or sell their stock, but were prohibited from buying any more stock. In a statement released Thursday, Robinhood said it had made the decision to freeze the trades in light of recent volatility. And that actually is the statement I'm trying to find in my emails. But I think I might have deleted it. And if I did do that, I apologize. It does appear there's actually a link to it here. As you can see, the little red underline under the word statement. So I might just be able to click on it here. But nonetheless, it's kind of annoying. I was saving that specifically for this episode of the Watchdog. And here we are. I guess maybe I would. Here it is. Found it. Okay. Now I can leave that alone and get back to the article. Robinhood CEO Vladimir Tenev. Yes, Vladimir Tenev. Very interesting name, I know. Further explained Thursday that the trades were frozen to protect the firm and protect our customers, denying accusations made on the internet that Robinhood was acting on the behest of Wall Street hedge funds, which of course he would deny. Not to use this as actual evidence because it is, said in humor. But the joke where they say, well, that's exactly what, you say, like, oh, well, no, I'm not interested in trying to go after you, guy. And it's like, well, that's exactly what somebody who's trying to go after me would say, right? Well, the reason that joke is funny is because it is, true. And there's really no way to disprove it. And again, not using that as an actual evidence against Robinhood. But, it's not like we expected Robinhood to come out and say, yeah, we definitely were doing this at the behest of Wall Street hedge funds, right? Anyways, he said that the restrictions were imposed to comply with capital requirements mandated by the SEC for stockbrokers. So again, one more time, and not that really makes anything different, right? But he said that the restrictions were imposed to comply with capital requirements mandated by the SEC for stockbrokers, and that is the Securities and Exchange Commission, for those of you who may not be aware. Really quick, I'm going to look up something that I should have looked up beforehand about Mr. Tenev here. So just one moment, friends. So he is, okay. I wanted to see if he was Russian, but actually Bulgarian. So I was just going to make a little comment as to how liberals are totally cool with Russian folk when they're helping them. Not that they shouldn't be, of course, right? Nobody should have a problem with Russian folk just because they're Russian, but it was just going to be sort of a joke playing off of the anti-Russian bigotries of a lot of leftists. At any rate, quote, we absolutely did not do this at the direction of any market maker or hedge fund. The reason we did it is because Robinhood, as a brokerage firm, we have lots of financial requirements, Tenev, end quote, Tenev said on CNBC. Quote, we have SEC net capital requirements and clearinghouse deposits. So that's money that we have to deposit at various clearinghouses. Some of these requirements fluctuate quite a bit based on volatility in the market, and they can be substantial in the current environment where there's a lot of volatility and a lot of concentrated activity in these names that have been going viral on social media, end quote, he explained. Quote, we just haven't seen this level of concentrated interest market-wide in a small number of names before, end quote, Tenev said. Quote, we do believe that you should be able to buy and sell the stocks that you want to, end quote. We're just not going to allow you, right? We believe it. We're just not going to allow it to happen. After the closing bell Thursday, Robinhood announced that it would resume limited trading of the restricted stocks. Quote, we have seen unprecedented interest due to the fact that finance has been culturally relevant in a way that it hasn't been before, end quote, Tenev said. Which, by the way, Mr. Tenev, that is partially your fault. In fact, it's partially your goal. So you shouldn't be sitting here complaining about it. But anyways, quote, of course, Robinhood stands for everyday investors. From the very beginning, we have stood for investors opening up access. It pains us to have had to impose these restrictions, and we're going to do what we can to enable trading these stocks as soon as we can. And there we have the end of the article. By the way, it has been announced today that on February 18th of this year, CEO Vladimir Tenev will actually be speaking before Congress, and we will absolutely have reports for you when that occurs. That'll be on a Thursday, so we probably won't be reporting on it until the next Friday. Although, who knows? I might just try and live stream it as sort of a Watchdog special. But nonetheless, so there you have that. That's not where the Robinhood question ends for today, because this from the Federalist. After raking in millions from Wall Street, Yellen calls meeting with top financial agencies to decide GameStop investors' fate. Now, real briefly, just because I should have mentioned it before we left that other article, I do want to note that there's nothing to confirm for sure at this point in time that Vladimir Tenev is lying. As far as, maybe he was actually forced to do this, him and his company, by the SEC. However, that doesn't exactly solve the peasants' problems. I hope you guys don't mind that I refer to you as peasants. I do it in love. I refer to myself as a peasant also. I also do it in humor. But I digress. Actively trying to keep us from investing in the stocks that we would like to invest in. But nonetheless, it is what may or may not be the case. Sorry, I saw some post here. Iron Charioteer had quite a few things that he was saying. He says if it's too good to be true, probably is. It's not Robin Hood, it's Scuba Hood. They steal from the poor and give to the rich. No kidding. So let AOC do her work. Well, I disagree with you on that there, bud, but it is interesting how strongly the progressives in support of AOC and the conservatives in support of your Ted Cruz, Ron Paul types, it's interesting how strongly they agree on not only this issue, but a lot of business-related issues. It kind of makes me wonder sometimes. I've often wondered if, an independent 2012 Ron Paul, Jesse Ventura ticket might have actually been able to unite all of the hot-headed youth in a sort of anti-elitist, mentality. But nonetheless, so after raking in millions from Wall Street, Yellen calls meeting with top financial agencies to decide GameStop investors' fate. Dun, dun, dun. Darth Yellen strikes. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen plans to meet with top five the Democratic administration's response to Redditors' ongoing hedge fund shortage game using GameStop and other infamously unpopular stock. Now, the only good response by any government to this is either literally nothing at all, right? Just let it be. Let the market do what it is doing. Or to actually go after Robinhood and the SEC. Excuse me. Keep having these little burp hiccups. But anyways, to go after them for violating the citizenry's right to buy and sell stock as they see fit, right? In my opinion, those are the only two legitimate options for a government to actually get involved in this particular situation, right? It is interesting. I would point out, because Iron Charioteer just said there, let AOC do her job. Iron Charioteer, you do realize, and I say this completely, in love and respect, so I'm not saying this is an insult to you or anything like that. But you do realize that the thing that just caused these billionaire hedge fund managers to lose a bunch of money and that got a whole bunch of the citizenry incredibly rich was capitalism, right? It was a bunch of this choice, a certain stock, so that stock would rise because of supply and demand. And it was only when the government got involved, which is not capitalism, that we actually had a problem. Right? So capitalism was actually fighting against the elites, but government intervention seems to be giving them back their power. Are you seeing why conservatives might have a little bit of a problem with, quote, letting AOC do her work, right? Or Bernie Sanders, for example. You don't want more power in the hands of the elites. You want less power in the hands of the elites. You want more power in the hands of the people, and that is what capitalism provides. In the meeting scheduled for as early as Thursday, the former chair of the Federal Reserve hopes to collaborate with the Securities and Exchange Commission, Federal Reserve, the New York Federal Reserve, and the Commodity Futures Trading Commission to assess potential actions to combat the stock frenzy that occurred over the last week, as well Not that this is something that's new right now. It's something that's basically true always, especially with the dollar continuously collapsing and with the hyperinflation that's just right around the corner. Buy gold, buy silver, buy copper even. Precious metals are where it is at. I'm not an investor, right? I'm not, what do you call that? The experts, right? The ones who are supposed to the ones that you pay so that they give you advice, right? I'm not that person, right? So, take this with a little bit of a grain of salt. But economists constantly are telling people, buy gold, buy gold, buy gold, buy gold, buy gold. The last time I checked at the gold price per ounce, it was $1,920 per ounce. That is insane. That is literally mind-blowing. There was a point in time when gold was not even worth $1,000 per ounce, right? And it wasn't that long ago. So buy precious metals if you are looking into investing. Go talk to somebody who's a little bit more wise on it than I am, absolutely. But buy precious metals, my friends. Anyways, Secretary Yellen believes the integrity of market is important and has asked for a discussion of recent volatility in financial markets and whether recent activities are consistent with investor protection and fair and efficient markets, end quote, the department said in a statement. Excuse me. Yellen's statement comes 1 week after the SEC warned that, quote, extreme stock price volatility has the potential to expose investors to rapid and severe loss and undermine market confidence, end quote. Which, if that happens, it happens, right? That is what the name of the game is, right? It is risk. Risk. It is constant risk, right? You can't let people be, quote, too big to fail. And by the way, you can't bail people out when they make mistakes, right? I mean, what you need to understand when you're buying anything in the stock market, right, is that you are gambling. You are taking a risk. It is a calculated risk, right? It is an estimation based off of advice that you've received in market trends and other things of that nature. Absolutely. But it is a risk. You are gambling. You're gambling that $100, $500, $5,000, $5 million that you put into XYZ company is going to actually net you some level of profit. 10%, 50%, 100%, whatever it ends up being. And you are taking that risk knowing full well, at least you should be taking that risk knowing full well that you could end up losing literally everything that you have actually added there. If the company collapses, there's nothing you can do about it, right? If it's continuously dropping over the next year or two, you can't just sell for your money back. It's not how it works. And you should know that before you go in. If you don't know that before you go in, then you shouldn't be buying stocks to begin with. And by the way, it's not the government's job to buy you out, regardless of if you did know. Okay? It's your risk. You bear the responsibility for it. If I do it, it's my risk, and I bear the responsibility for it. You see what I'm saying? Shortly after the group of Redditor investors began buying up different companies' stock at higher than predicted rates, brokerage Robinhood Financial halted trading in GameStop, AMC Entertainment, and other stocks after claiming there was a $3 billion backup at a purchase order clearinghouse. The decision by Robinhood was scrutinized by politicians and small-time investors on both sides of the political aisle, who accused the brokerage of defending Wall Street. The accusation only furthered when big tech companies such as Google intervened and reportedly deleted more than 100,000 negative reviews listed on the Robinhood app. And by the way, you do just have to know, and I'm sure a lot of you do, but you just have to note it because it is the facts, right? Big tech and big pharma and the big entertainment industry and the big media, the mainstream media, right? And the politicians and the lobbyists and the oil companies and the chocolate companies who are, hiring slaves in South Africa or whatever African country that it happens to be. These guys are all in cahoots with each other. Not literally every single one. It's not like they go and, have a cabal meeting at Illuminati's R Us or something like that, right? But these people have backroom deals. They have conversations with each other, right? That feast that all the billionaires are invited to once every freaking month, right? And of course, I'm saying that in a little bit, it's tongue in cheek. There's not literally a set feast, right? But that rich people have rich friends. If they're going to go have a little meal or a party or a banquet or something, their rich friends are going to join and they're going to discuss stuff, right? It's just human nature. You don't have to have this secret cabal where everybody goes and, burns a giant owl and sacrifices a child in order to have people who are in cahoots with each other, right? The risk of Yellen's coordinated federal intervention also raised some eyebrows after a recent report demonstrated how Robinhood's biggest client, Citadel LLC, as well as other large financial firms, previously paid the secretary more than $7 million over the last 2 years in speaking fees. $7 million. When pressed about the potential conflict of interest, White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki, I'm not sure if that's how you say your name, but I actually really don't care, so that's okay, brushed off reporters' concerns, failing to address whether Yellen plans to recuse herself from the GameStop stock shortage investigation, or shorting investigation, excuse me. Quote, separate from the GameStop issue, the Secretary of the Treasury is one of the world-renowned experts on markets, on the economy. It shouldn't be a surprise to anyone. She was paid to give her perspective and advice before she came into office, end quote. And you can imagine, what would be actually happening here if this was Donald Trump or Ted Cruz or somebody else who was a conservative who had somebody like Janet Yellen having these meetings up, right? In fact, right, just the audacity to even have Rex Tillerson at all, right, or other billionaires working for him, that was something that was used against Trump. But when it comes to Janet Yellen, who I don't think she's a billionaire, but I know she is super rich, right, doesn't matter anymore, because that's from office or whatever, right? By the way, just for the record, nobody should ever trust anybody who was chair of the Federal Reserve, which is what Janet Yellen was. She's influenced by Keynesian economics, which is just basically a fancy way of saying failure of the economic system, and so on and so forth, right? And so these sorts of things are just not things that I think she has any business being involved in. She's a corrupt individual. But I digress. I'm going to go ahead and look up her net worth real quick to see how much it is. Overall net worth is $13 million, $16 million as of 2020, actually. So that's $7 million. That went a long way for her, right? It's almost half of her net worth. But at any rate, oh, you know what I just noticed? Man, this whole time I have not had my headline up. Oh, all right. And Robinhood peas in a corporatist pod, right? It doesn't really matter anymore because now we're on to something else. But here we are. The persecution of Tony Spell continues. Hope you guys can see this. Hope I'm not roboting anymore. Court. Governor John Bel Edwards' coronavirus order trumps Tony Spell's First Amendment rights. One more time. Governor John Bel Edwards' coronavirus order trumps Tony Spell's First Amendment rights, which, of course, means that they're not actually rights. It means they are privileges that are granted to Tony Spell and his congregation by the Louisiana state government. And of course, that is exactly incorrect. That is the exact opposite of what is correct. But nonetheless, this is from The Advocate, which is a Louisiana-based David J. quote. Sorry, John Bell's effort to denounce a church pastor's claim that the First Amendment gives him and others the right to gather in large groups, regardless of the possible danger to the community at large. This court is wrong. Really that simple. I don't give a damn unanimously on this issue. The Constitution says very plainly, you have the right to freedom of religion, to free exercise thereof, right? To free exercise thereof. And it says you have the right to peaceably assemble. Both of those rights are being violated by these coronavirus emergency orders, period. End of the conversation. You can say anything you like to try and continue the conversation, but anything you say past that is wrong. It is incorrect. Read the Constitution for yourself. Free exercise thereof shall not be infringed, etc. Matter of fact, I might even pull it up here in a moment once we're done with this article. Central is the city he lives in, by the way. Central Pastor Tony Spell went to court Monday, believing the 19th Judicial District Court, Ebony Johnson Rose, would void 6 criminal complaints against him and asserted she ruled against God after failing to do so. Prosecutors allege Spell violated strict public gathering capacity limits Edwards put in place last spring as the coronavirus pandemic took hold in Louisiana. And interestingly enough, despite that, Tony Spell is not dead. Nobody in the Tony Spell congregation is dead. There are thousands of people who attend his church. Why are none of them dead? Could it be because maybe this was all just a big giant hoax? Could it be that maybe the numbers were inflated so that people could try and make Donald Trump look bad, as literally every conservative pundit and at least a third of the liberal pundits were saying since March? COVID-19, the disease caused by the virus, has killed 8,500 Louisiana residents, and Spell faces $3,000 in fines. Once again, I'd be interested to see how many of those 8,500 actually attended his church. I guarantee you it's 0. I am willing to make a bet it is actually 0. Currently, though daily case numbers are far higher now than they were then, there are also vaccines and new businesses and places of worship, however, are much looser. Churches can operate at 75% capacity, which again proves that this is a hoax. It doesn't mean that COVID-19 doesn't exist. It doesn't mean that nobody's died from COVID-19, okay? But what it does show is even when the cases are worse, but the political situation has changed, all of a sudden everything is different. Hospitalization and the death toll climbed last March and April, Spell set up several showdowns with authorities by continuing to hold services that drew hundreds of worshipers at his Life Tabernacle Church off Hooper Road. He welcomed media attention of his defiance, criticized Edwards over the restrictions as an infringement of constitutional protections for the free exercise of religion, and ultimately sought relief in state and federal courts. He's lost on all fronts so far, which is a tragedy in my opinion. It just goes to show that the U.S. court system is dead and it no longer works. Of course, you could argue it's been dead for quite some time. But I guess I won't necessarily. He was pleaded not guilty to those charges, faces jail time in addition to a $500 fine on each accusation. It's 6 months of jail time, by the way. So if you multiply that by 6 times, it would be 3 years jail time, $3,000 fine. 6 times last March, he violated orders limiting public gatherings to 50 and then just 10 people. The restrictions were in place when far less was known about the virus, even though more people are allegedly dying and more people are allegedly being hospitalized and more people are allegedly having cases. And also we have more dangerous mutations. But again, none of that actually matters because the political situation has changed. Enter the courthouse, which is following Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, or CDC, guidance promoted as a means to control the pandemic. He instead waited outside and across the street from the courthouse with a few dozen of his supporters and church members who held up signs and a U.S. flag and wore T-shirts protesting the state mask mandate. Same thing there is happening with Ammon Bundy, by the way, who will probably be talking about his case on Friday. But Ammon Bundy here in Idaho is also having a refusal to wear masks in his court, in the court that he's going to, right? Spell and his supporters were unmasked. Speaking of both of those things, actually, Ammon Bundy for governor 2022, and Tony Spell should probably consider running for governor of Louisiana in 2022 as well. Looks like that state is quickly being lost to the totalitarians. Spell asserted outside court that he had broken no laws and considered his case an open and shut one that should have gone the other way. And that is true. A mandate is not a law. It did not go through the proper legislative channels, and therefore there is no crime to be committed. He said he plans to appeal to the Louisiana First Circuit Court of Appeals, but also believed judgment was also pending for those who worked to undermine religious liberties. And I completely agree with that, by the way. Quote, "You just ruled against God, so you get ready for the judgment of God," end quote, Spell said to the claps and affirmations of some of his followers behind him. And again, I completely agree with that. And I've been saying that for quite some time. God is not mocked. Okay. We had a prayer to Brahma that ended with a woman in the Congress, and within 2 days, Congress was stormed. And the Speaker of the House's life was being threatened. Okay. And I'm not saying that to justify those who stormed. God can use people with evil hearts to accomplish his righteous judgments. And I'm also not going to get too religious into this because this is my, obviously, news program, not my apologetics program. However, God is not mocked. That which a man sows, that he should also reap. And, I mean, we're going to see it happen. We will see it happen in this country. I guarantee it. I think part of it we already have. Right? The riots, the death, the billions of dollars in debt, or trillions, billions. That's cute. Trillions of dollars in debt. In a later interview, Spell urged people to stand up for their liberties and called Edwards a Roman Catholic, a liar, godless, and a tyrant, the latter for ignoring Republicans who asked him to more quickly reopen the state's economy. I agree with each one of those things, by the way. Also, Roman Catholics are not Christians. They are Roman Catholics. Okay? Roman Catholicism is easily as different from biblical Christianity as is Islam, as is Mormonism, as is Jehovah's Witnessism, right? It is not the same religion. So I know they want to know, well, he's a Roman Catholic. He's a man of faith. Yeah, so is Joe Biden. So is Pope Francis. So is Nancy Pelosi. So is Cardi freaking B, dude. Okay, Roman Catholicism is basically, oh, I feel sorry for something I did. Let me go do it again so I can feel sorry tomorrow. Right? Quote, "The governor hates Christians. If he says anything different, he's a liar. He says all these people behind me are lawbreakers, and we're not. The law's breaker right over." Edwards said he was pleased with the judge. Pleased with the judge's ruling, and that with the pandemic continuing, wearing a mask and remaining socially distanced were the responsible approach. I don't know why they keep giving these ads. It's like, dude, literally looking at the news. I'm not interested in freaking bikinis. I'm also a guy, so like, why do you think I'm interested in bikinis in the first place? Anyways, Google ads are weird. Where was I? Quote, my Christian Catholic faith, he says, which is just incorrect. You are not a Christian. You are a Catholic. They are not the same. Anyways, Catholic faith teaches me that we should be good neighbors to one another, and that includes doing what we can to protect each other from this terrible virus, end quote, Edwards said. Quote, the vaccine is not available to everyone at this time, but masks are. The best and easiest thing that we can do, is wear one to help get us back to where we all want to be, end quote. Which, of course, is very interesting, considering the fact that we have had multiple studies from multiple nations, one of which is the United States, coming from the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, the CDC, right? We've had numerous studies that suggest that cloth masks actually have a failure rate as high as anywhere from 90 to 97%, right? The aerosol droplets that you actually have coming from your mouth, right? And COVID-19, that COVID-19 would actually be present in, right? Are actually smaller than the masks themselves. So, the idea that they're not going to be able to make it through the holes in the mask is actually wrong. It's incorrect, right? And Dr. Anthony Fauci has said numerous times that while it certainly makes us feel better to wear masks, it doesn't actually do much, right? That's Fauci's words. That's not my words. So you can call me a conspiracy theorist if you like. He said it, and he's the guy leading the coronavirus task force, at least one of the two. Inside the courthouse, Spell's attorney, Jeff Wittenbrink, I thought he was, I guess that changed. I thought he had the former Alabama Supreme Court guy, Roy Moore. But anyways, Inside the courthouse earlier, Spell's attorney Jeff Wittenbrink argued Edwards' order unfairly and illegally singled out religious organizations for restrictions while allowing businesses like Walmart and Lowe's to operate without social distancing or masking requirements and no gathering limits. This is exactly correct. This same thing happened in New York to the Jews. It happened in Illinois to Christians. It happened in California to Christians, right? In fact, California even got as crazy as to go out and specifically target churches with things like you're not allowed to sing in a place of worship, right? Anyways, Wittenbrink pointed to a recent U.S. asserted had been aimed at conservative Jewish synagogues and Catholic churches, which is true. Those places of worship had been put in zones that limited their attendance to 10 or 25 people, though many had capacities for more than 1,000, as Life Tabernacle does. The ruling included concurring opinions that rejected a conclusion from Chief Justice John Roberts in an earlier California case on coronavirus restrictions that a state could make distinctions among businesses that pose different levels of risk of spread. For example, between an hour or more in the church pews singing and praying versus a quick pass through the store. Even though, I mean, I don't know if you've ever been grocery shopping, but it's certainly not just a quick pass. I mean, sometimes grocery shopping can take you like an hour, right? An hour and a half. Not that I think they should make the grocery shopping part banned as well, right? I think they should open everything up, but nonetheless, I would suggest, Your Honor, that Chief Justice Roberts has probably never stood in line at a Walmart on a Saturday because the fact of the matter is you can stand there for a line in a long time. Stand there in a long line with a lot of people for a lot of time in close contact, end quote, Wittenbrink said. Exactly. Like, John Roberts, he just simply doesn't know what he's talking about. Either that or he's lying, which, to be honest, the second version is a little bit more likely. Though the first potential, what would you call that? Or done it, right? He's just completely ignorant. That's totally possible. I mean, this dude is one of these elites that we were just talking about, right? Probably have somebody buying his groceries for him. He argued later that the state constitution also offers greater protections for First Amendment rights than even the federal constitution, which is true also here in Idaho, and it's been used against Governor Brad Little. And the state law giving Edwards the power to act on emergencies limits him from taking such strong restrictions on religious liberties. Also true. But Darrell Papillion, a special assistant to District Attorney Hiller Moore, argued that Louisiana's restrictions were applied generally, unlike New York's, and neutrally, so were distant from the stricken New York limits. He said that at the time the charges were made against Spell, Edwards was responding to the early days of the outbreak when New Orleans was one of 3 hotspots in the nation and Louisiana was under declared national emergency. Despite the comparisons to retailers, he argued the rules were actually looser on places of worship than other similarly situated businesses at the time, like bars and restaurants, which couldn't have indoor activities then. I would like to point out, Your Honor, that was forced on Louisiana by people like Tony Spell, because originally they were not wanting him to meet at all. I've actually done an interview, fun fact, with Tony Spell. If you guys want to see that interview, I will drop that in the description here in just a moment. Papillion added the Supreme Court has long recognized that the First Amendment can't be used as a reason to break the law. Can't be used as a reason to break. Shouldn't actually violate any portion of the First Amendment. There shouldn't be a position where you can break the law by enacting your First Amendment rights. It's oxymoronic. It's stupid. There should never be any point in time whatsoever that assembling or petitioning the government or using your free speech or worshiping as you see fit is violation of any law. And by the way, sir, this isn't a law. Executive orders are not laws. Mandates are not laws. Laws, according to every constitution, need to go through the legislative branch and be passed with at least 51% of their vote, as well as being signed by the executive of your state or nation and being seen as constitutional by the courts. Mandate and say, oh, well, that doesn't allow you to violate the law. It's not the law. sir. Papillion added that the Supreme Court has long recognized that the First Amendment can't be used as a reason to break the law, whether it be having multiple wives or smoking peyote as a religious practice, both of which I strongly disagree with, by the way. Yes, you should absolutely have the right, if you are somebody in a tribal religion, to smoke peyote for religious purposes. Absolutely. The United States government does not have the right to tell you otherwise, period. I don't care what the courts have to say. Quote, if a religion begins to declare that it can do whatever it wants to do, then we are no longer a nation of laws. We are a nation that is under the judgment, the decision, the intent of a man or a woman who decides they will not obey the law, end quote, Papillion said. No religion is declaring they can do whatever they want to do. None. Zero. Nada. Zilch. Right? And if the DMV can differentiate between a guy putting a pasta colander on his head for a joke and a guy who needs to wear or a girl rather needs to wear a hijab for their religious purposes, right? Because they can tell which is different, then you can do the same as well, right? You can go out and say, hey, these groups of people are obviously just using peyote because they want to get high and selling it on the illegal market. These groups of people are obviously doing it for religious purposes. We do that all the time, actually. For example, kids are allowed to drink wine in communion. Can kids go drink wine somewhere else? No, they are not allowed to, but we allow them. Why? Because we protect religious liberties in this country. Jonathan Rose agreed with Papillion's argument that the New York restrictions were factually distinct from what was before her, and that a previous Supreme Court ruling upon which a Louisiana federal court had upheld Edwards' orders last year was still a binding decision. Even though that doesn't make the idea of precedent doesn't make any sense in my opinion. The law says what it says. It doesn't matter what a judge might have said a year ago or 2 years ago or 5 years ago or 20 years ago. District Attorney Hiller Moore welcomed the ruling and said he believed Edwards' restrictions didn't have anything to do with specifically singling out religious activity, even though we have seen all throughout the country, as well as in Louisiana, that is explicitly the case. Quote, we think it's what the law was clearly and agree with the judge's decision. It's not personal, end quote, Moore said. Moore's comments came shortly after some of Spell's supporters confronted him and Papillion about the ruling while they were all waiting for the elevators to arrive at the courthouse 9th floor, overlooking the state capitol and Mississippi River. At the time Spell was charged early in April, coronavirus cases have been surging in Louisiana, and the state saw some of the deadliest weeks of the pandemic outbreak not so long after. Again, I would like to know how many people in fact, forget deaths, because I'm almost positive it's zero. These articles would definitely be smearing him if it was higher than zero, if it was even one, right? So how many people out of the actual thousands who attend Tony Spell's church, how many people were even hospitalized with COVID? I would like to know. Once again, I bet it's zero. At least one church member has died after contracting COVID-19. To be fair, did see this particular thing coming, right? This is something we've all known about before. This is something they said back in, I believe it was May. It has since been debunked. Again, I will provide my interview with Tony Spell in the description below, and you guys can check that out for yourselves. And I guess Spell's lawyer was hospitalized after it, so that one is probably true. So I guess there was at least one hospitalization. But this person who died, they say, notice how they word it, died after contracting COVID-19. COVID-19 was not actually listed as the cause of death. They died with COVID-19, not from COVID-19. Thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of people die every year with the flu. We do not count it as them dying by the flu because these things are not one and the same thing. Again, I will provide the link in the description or in the live chat rather, to my conversation with Tony Spell, where we discuss these matters. Spell was also arrested not long after and charged with assault when a man protesting the services said the pastor nearly backed into him with a school bus outside the church. That'll also be in that interview I have with Mr. Spell. That case remains pending, but the court had ordered that his bail. He continued to return to his pulpit and continued to preach in the weeks following, in some services lifting his pant leg to reveal the location tracking devices around his ankle. Spell was relieved of house arrest in May and was also charged with 2 counts of being a fugitive from justice for violating his house arrest. The case has been pending in district courts with no future date set. With Johnson & Rose's ruling on Monday, the 6 counts against Spell remain in place. He is set for another court proceeding in March. By the way, I just saw, I know this is 30 minutes ago, but I just saw I Gotta Go Cheers CJ from Iron Charioteer. Thanks for being here, Iron Charioteer. I'm diametrically opposed we are on most things. So have a good day. God bless you if you're still watching. Nonetheless, that ends the article here. And of course, we are, I mean, I don't know what else to say about this, right? The courts don't have a consistent opinion on this matter, right? Half the time they're saying, no, you don't actually have the right to do anything that you want to do here. And they're going after John MacArthur, and they're going after funeral homes in Illinois, and they're going after synagogues in New York, right? And then another half of the time they're saying, no, this actually isn't okay, and we're ruling against it. I mean, the Supreme Court, as you just saw in this article, has had rulings contradicting itself, right? Just in the year 2020 in regards to this issue. And so it's kind of hard to see where we're going to be going from here. I personally think that Tony Spell is not out of the woodworks at all. It appears John MacArthur is. It appears some of the Jewish men and women in losing the name here. New York, excuse me, might be. Here, I'm not in Louisiana, but in Louisiana, I don't know if that'll end up being the case. Man, already up over 12 minutes. Shoot. Well, we'll get to at least one more. I'm not going to get to the coup in Myanmar. We'll get to a little bit of them because that'll be easy enough. But ecumenical movement does seek unity on climate change. This is important, so I do want to read it to you. This is from the Lutheran World Federation. Ecumenical imperative to protect our common home. Our common home, of course, being Earth. I was going to read this actually on Monday, but ended up kind of pushing it off until today, and now here we are, even at the end of today, and I still haven't done it. So we're gonna go ahead and make sure that this is that I promised you guys I would share. So for those of you who are interested, there is my interview with Pastor Tony Spell. Go ahead and let me know what you think about it. Ecumenical imperative to protect our common home. This is from the 27th of January, 2021 from Geneva, Switzerland. And again, this is the Lutheran World Federation. All right, let's zoom in here a little bit. Then this is super small letters. Webinar to launch season of creation focuses on practical ways of working together for Christian unity. The week of prayer for Christian unity continues to be a priority for all churches every day of the year. This theme of practical ecumenical engagement in caring for our common home was at the heart of a webinar during the week of prayer to launch the upcoming season of creation, scheduled for 2021, September 2021. Excuse me. Theologians. Yes, that is a real word. Eco-theologians. I am not kidding. One more time. Eco-freaking theologians, my dudes. Including the Lutheran World Federation Program Executive for Identity, Communion, and Formation. Reverend Dr. Chad Rimmer, for Identity, Communion, and Formation, whose name is Reverend Dr. Chad Rimmer. My apologies. Excuse me. Need to finish this up. He stressed how COVID-19 has, quote, unmasked the imbalances that exist in our relationship to one another and to the earth, end quote. While virus of well-being, it is not rooted in Earth's capacity to sustain, end quote. Even though every single time, without even a single fail, that they say, the Earth can't support X, Y, and Z, the Earth ends up inevitably supporting X, Y, Z, and a couple other letters in the alphabet. But whatever. Rimmer described the liturgical season of creation as an expression of Christian unity that puts us in touch with the visible unity we have as humans and as creatures. Reflecting on the theme, man, this is just ridiculous. Reflecting on the theme for this year's week of prayer, abide in me and you shall bear much fruit, Dr. Luke Andrianos, a World Council of Churches consultant on care for creation, sustainability, and climate justice, said the passage from St. John's Gospel emphasizes the need to understand ourselves as branches of the vine which is in Christ, which is even true. But the pandemic and the environmental crisis have taught us that if we are arrogant and take more than we need of our daily bread from the earth, that the balance of creation is disrupted, causing negative consequences for all. Oh my gosh. Oh, that is not what happened at all. This is so freaking stupid. I can't believe this is coming from pastors. The pandemic and environmental crisis have taught us that if we are arrogant and take more than we need of our daily bread from the earth, he said, then the balance of creation is disrupted, causing negative consequences for all. Because apparently that's what happened. Some dude decided to eat a bat and or something broke out of a lab in Wuhan. Therefore, your conclusion is that we're taking more from the earth's bread than we need? Like, what? What are you talking about? This has literally nothing at all to do with climate change or overindulgence of human beings. It has to do with people eating bats, which are not sanitary. You moron. Like, come on, how difficult is this to figure out? 4-year-olds can figure it out. Dwelling as one family, speaking from a Catholic perspective. Oh, this is going to be great, right? Father Joshtham Kurithatam, don't know if I said that right, corridor of the ecology and creation sector of the Vatican's dicastery for promoting integral human development. Every single one of these has an absurdly long title. But anyways, said Jesus' instruction to abide in my love reminds us of our invocation to dwell as one family in our common home. No. Not accurate at all. Okay. Abide in my love means exactly what it says. It means to abide or dwell in the love of Christ, right? Does that include having love for creation and having love for your fellow man? Of course. Does it include having unity with your fellow man as one great giant family? No, not even close. Jesus explicitly says, I have come with a sword to divide asunder. I'm paraphrasing slightly, okay? To divide asunder, right? He comes to separate the sheep from the goats. In fact, do you even know what sanctified means? It means set apart from. Yes, set apart from. God is a segregationist. He is not a segregationist in race or in a culture or in gender, right? Or things of that nature. But when it comes to his own versus the world's own, he is a segregationist. Okay, it is not supposed to be a reminder to dwell as one family in our common home. Find me a single verse. In fact, you can use the 22 apocryphal books of the Bible even, right? So you have 88 books, 39 in the Old Testament, 27 in the New Testament, 22 in the apocryphals. I gave you 88 books. Find me that in any of them. You can't do it because it's not there. He spoke of the joy of seeing how people work and witness together in difficult situations, but he also raised concern about the unequal distribution of COVID-19 vaccines, asking, quote, if we are living in a common home, how can we forget those who are most in need, end quote. Which, by the way, to translate for those of you who aren't absurdly racist, what he's saying is white people shouldn't get the vaccine because colored folks should be getting it first. And by the way, I think it'd be ridiculous to put it the other way around too, just in case anybody is wanting to have that made clear to them, right? You shouldn't put race first. At any rate, Mr. Richard Murray, vice chair, of Eco Congregation Scotland and a lay reader in the Scottish Episcopal Church, shared the journey of many different denominations in his county of Aberdeenshire to form the Northeast Scotland Climate Action Network. The aim, he said, quote, is to create a single coordinated voice, end quote, in raising urgent environmental issues with the government, regional authorities, or big business. Name wrong. I'm almost sure of it, but nonetheless. Moderator Amy Echeverria, I might have actually said that right. Echeverria, International Coordinator of Justice, Peace, and Ecology for the Colombian Missionaries. Every single one, I swear, this is like 19 syllables. It's ridiculous. Anyways, reflected on the importance of prayer, quote, in the ongoing process of conversion, end quote, which leads from environmental awareness to commitment and practical action. Check out this quote. This is like, I, as an anti-ecumenist, right, if I was trying to like make stuff up to get you guys on my side, this is the kind of quote I would make up. But here it is actually being said by Reverend Dr. Chad Rimmer. Part of the ecumenical movement is to embody the visible unity and incarnate. To embody the visible unity and incarnate the spiritual unity. Well, let me tell you something, Dr. Rimmer. God is not unified with the world. God is not unified with sin. God is not unified with unrighteousness. He doesn't unify so that we can go and sing a great kumbaya so that everybody's nice and frolicky. It's not how it works. Reverend Chad Rimmer highlighted the theme for the 2021 season of creation, which is based on the renewed understanding of the oikos of God as a common theme for all people. The ecumenical nature of this annual celebration, which runs from September 1st to October the 4th, and that'll be this year, 2021, helps to, quote, embody the visible unity and incarnate the spiritual unity that is ours through one word, one faith, and one baptism, he said, which, of course, is what we had just written, or read, rather, not written. By the way, oikos, just so you guys knew, oh my goodness, I cannot even speak. Right? Anyways, oikos is like it's like a city-state almost, like a little community. So when you're saying the oikos of God, it's saying the community of God. Oikos also happens to be the word that we get ecumenism from. Although, there's a couple jumps down the line from that. But it's just to give you guys a little etymological lesson as to what exactly that word means. All right, let's finish this up. Noting how the pandemic has disrupted our ability to gather together to worship. Rimmer said, the week of prayer for Christian unity and the season of creation are, quote, times to reconnect and root ourselves in a common vocation, end quote. That common vocation, by the way, should not be the combating of climate change. It should be the worship of our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, and the complete and total dedication of our lives to him. We can see, quote, how unrooted we have become when our singing becomes a vector for disease and we are unable to share a hug or a handshake, end quote, he said. Quote, standing in the shadow of the cross, he concluded, we see grace breaking in both in our ecumenical experiences and in the harmony of the whole of God's creation. And the quote actually ends both in our ecumenical experiences. And of course, ecumenism is of the devil. Ecumenism is something that should never, under any circumstances, be supported by anybody at any time. Okay? Even if you are not a believer, I should not need to convince you that it is a bad idea for a bunch of self-righteous, pompous, religious folk to have power over what everybody believes and to all have that collective power with each other so you can't go run to somebody else. I shouldn't have to tell you why that's problematic. Now, from a religious perspective, I can absolutely tell you why it's even more. So with that, I guess this will be the end. I did want to let you guys know a little bit. We're not going to read this article because we don't have time. But Aung San Suu Kyi has actually been charged with a crime in Myanmar. We were reporting on this, of course, on Monday, right? How she had been arrested, as well as numerous other leaders. Well, she has now been charged with election fraud and election tampering. And so that obviously legitimizes the arrest of her and her fellows. A lot of progressives, LGBT activists, and so on are not very pleased with it, of course. A lot of people who are more on the conservative side are. They obviously want to. But wanted to let you guys know about that, even though we won't actually be able to get a full report on it there. So I hope you liked this. I hope this was a good eye-opening episode for you, as they always are. Of course, I hope they always are. If you guys like this content, please do like, please do share, please do subscribe if you want to get notified of our content. We have Watchdogs Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Unapologetics on Sunday and Saturday, with the light version of it being on Saturday. So if you want to ring that bell, get notified of these things, then, of course, we certainly recommend you do so. Like I said, please do like, please do share, get it on all your different social media platforms. I just dropped the Patreon link to the synagogue in the description below. If you would like to support me financially, then you can certainly go to that. The synagogue as well. You'll find me just about anywhere. Parler, whenever it gets back up, Gab, Minds, Telegram, MeWe, Facebook, Twitter, right? You can find me as the synagogue. Patreon, find me as the synagogue. I will, of course, be there, and I'm happy to have your support. Questions, comments, criticisms, concerns, critiques, anything like that in the comments section below. Let me know how useless I am and why I should quit and give up, or how great I am and why I'm going to be the salvation of the universe. Of course, that second one is obviously not true. But nonetheless, thank you guys for being here. One thing quickly before we go, I do want to let you guys know I have a debate, on Modern Day Debate tonight. Who was Jesus is the question. Myself, Michael Brenton, who is a Buddhist, and David Fitzgerald, who is an atheist and Christ mythicist, are going to be the participants. And that'll be over on the Modern Day Debate channel. I believe James Coons, the Modern Day Debate founder and head, right? I believe he'll be the moderator, but nonetheless, I guess we'll see. Definitely check that out. I definitely appreciate you guys for checking those sorts of things out. Also, I'll have a debate on the 12th on the same channel, be a tag against Cider Import and Leophilius on the question of capitalism versus communism. So, happy to have those things. Hope you guys check them out. Hope you like them. Hope that this channel actually gets some support. Thank you to Honesty Angel, to Erica Hubner. I don't know if I said that right, to Nightmare. So many of you others who are here. Iron Cherry Tears consistently here. I think it's usually to argue, but we found out today, I guess that's not always the case, right? So thank you guys for consistently being watchers of this program, Brother Nicholas, right, etc. I appreciate that. Get the word out. Shalom. God bless you all. And to him, of course, be all the glory. This has been the Watchdog exclusively on the synagogue, and I have a question for you. In the face of Armageddon, in the face of Armageddon, will you compromise?